Welcome to tonight's soothing journey through the shadows of medieval history, where we explore the harsh realities behind one of history's most misunderstood professions, the medieval assassin. While modern entertainment portrays them as skilled warriors in elegant attire, the historical truth reveals a far grimmer tale. Before we delve into our story, I invite you to make yourself comfortable. If you find value in these historical narratives, consider subscribing to join our growing community of history enthusiasts. I'd love to know where you re-listening from, perhaps as you drift off to sleep in Tokyo, or while relaxing on a quiet evening in Madrid. In medieval times, becoming an assassin wasn't a choice made with glory in mind. It was often the last resort for those whom society had cast aside. Picture this: a destitute peasant or a dishonored soldier, driven not by ambition but by desperate circumstances, forced to survive in the darkest corners of medieval society. These weren't the mythical figures of legend. Rather, they were society's outcasts, former soldiers who'd lost their honor, peasants who'd lost everything, or criminals who'd developed an unfortunate talent for remaining unseen. The wealthy didn't dirty their hands with such work. They merely funded it. Even owning a single goat placed you above such desperate measures. The life of an assassin began with a whispered conversation in a dimly lit tavern. The target was never someone simple like a local merchant. Instead, it was often a corrupt noble, a wealthy bishop, or someone protected by layers of guards and stone walls. The more important the target, the more desperate the assassin had to be to accept the task. Consider the grim reality: no benefits, no recognition, and certainly no regular working hours. These individuals couldn't advertise their services or build a reputation. Their survival depended on absolute anonymity. When asked about their profession, they'd mumble something about being a traveling merchant, hoping no one noticed the suspicious stains on their clothing. These weren't celebrated anti-heroes or master criminals. They were forgotten figures in history's margins, often meeting their end before they could spend their blood-earned coins. They lived as shadows and died as whispers, leaving barely a trace in historical records. Let's dispel another common myth. There were no secret training academies or ancient orders of assassins. Learning happened through brutal trial and error, with emphasis on the error. Most were untrained individuals who learned to move quietly and strike quickly simply because failure meant death. Military experience was valuable not for combat skills but for understanding guard rotations and fortress layouts. The reality of survival was harsh. A successful escape required more skill than the actual assassination. There were no instruction manuals or mentors, just the hard lessons learned from close calls and narrow escapes. You learned to identify patrol patterns while hiding in shadows, and mastered the art of blending in with servants and laborers. Poison use was particularly dangerous and unreliable. Medieval assassins had no understanding of proper dosages or chemical reactions. A poisoning attempt could result in anything from a mild stomach ache to an agonizing death, sometimes for the assassin rather than the target. Success often depended more on luck than skill. Occasionally, a fortunate few might learn from experienced thieves or retired soldiers. Perhaps they'd discover how to move silently across creaky floorboards or identify the weak points in a noble's security. But such knowledge sharing was rare. The profession's nature meant that teachers often disappeared, either by choice or by force. Their arsenal was simple and crude. No exotic weapons or specialized tools, just basic daggers, perhaps a garrote, and whatever small weapons could be concealed beneath tattered clothing. These weren't skilled warriors, but desperate survivors who learned to use simple tools effectively. Success in this deadly profession wasn't measured by skill, but by survival. Each successful mission was followed by a hasty disappearance before anyone could connect the mysterious death to the stranger who'd arrived in town days earlier. This was their education, swift, brutal, and solitary, marked by close calls and countless near misses, with each lesson potentially being their last. Picture yourself in medieval times, seeking the path of an assassin, not for glory, but for something far more practical: survival itself. The glint of silver coins, cold, heavy, and promising, beckoned like a siren's song. But like many things in the dark corners of history, this promise held a bitter truth. The reality was far more sobering. Those who hired assassins weren't looking for partnerships. They sought disposable tools. Their offers seemed generous at first, a pouch of silver, split between now and completion. But these promises were as fragile as morning frost. Consider the cruel irony. After risking everything, crawling through shadows, carefully executing your task, perhaps ending a baron's final breath, you'd return to find empty hands and hollow excuses. The client had vanished like morning mist, or worse, waited with blade in hand. After all, a dead assassin tells no tales and demands no payment. Even successful missions brought meager rewards. The coins never quite compensated for the endless hours spent hiding in hay-filled lofts, plagued by fleas and haunted by choices. Your payment came with a whispered reminder that echoed like a curse. Remember, you were never here. Some contracts concealed deadly snares. Imagine discovering your target was merely bait, the job a carefully orchestrated trap. There you'd stand, surrounded by guards, your fate sealed before you drew your first breath in that room. And should you survive, there was no court of law for failed assassins, unless you counted the gallows as a form of justice. Time taught harsh lessons. Demand payment up front. Trust no soul, not even the seemingly harmless scribe promising fortune. These life-changing opportunities indeed changed lives by shortening them considerably. To survive meant learning to vanish before broken promises turned into broken bones. As for your tools of trade, forget the romantic notions of elaborate weaponry. No mystical devices or ingenious contraptions graced your arsenal. Reality armed you with whatever you could conceal beneath threadbare cloaks. Simple daggers, basic tools, nothing that would draw unwanted attention. If fortune smiled upon you, you might possess a reliable blade, sharp, clean, and mercifully odorless. Even poison, often romanticized as an assassin's elegant solution, proved frustratingly unreliable. Medieval poisons, crude concoctions of plants, minerals, and various unsavory ingredients, were unpredictable at best. Some brought swift endings, others lingered for hours, and still others merely resulted in 2 days of violent illness, leaving you with a very alive, very angry, and now extremely cautious target. In the dim candlelight of medieval nights, ropes became silent allies, whether for climbing stone walls or dispatching targets. These simple tools required masterful handling. One wrong knot could mean the difference between success and a guard's sword at your throat. Bows, while effective from afar, were impractical luxuries for those who needed to move unseen through castle corridors. The art of medieval assassination was intimate and ruthless. No graceful archery or elaborate swordplay, just swift, decisive moments in dark corners. When weapons failed, necessity bred creativity. A broken blade might lead to an improvised weapon, perhaps a sharp-edged roof tile, or even a seemingly innocent shoe buckle wielded with deadly intent. Your tools traveled with you, hidden in clever places, sewn into clothing hems, tucked into boots, or concealed within innocent-looking loaves of bread. These weren't just weapons. They were lifelines in a world where discovery meant death. Between missions, there was no time for weapon maintenance or improvements. Each tool was a prayer made metal, simple, reliable, and hopefully faithful enough to see you through one more task. Medieval assassins didn't waste their skills on common targets. Their marks were the powerful. Nobles wrapped in silk, bishops draped in gold, military commanders whose deaths could change the course of wars. These weren't easy prey. Think of the layers of protection surrounding them. Guards patrolled in precise patterns, their armor gleaming in torchlight, their eyes sharp and suspicious. You learned their routines intimately. Which guard wheezed on the third-floor stairs? Which one favored his left leg after an old war wound? Castle defenses were masterworks of paranoia. Murder holes gaped overhead like hungry mouths. Moats teemed with unseen dangers, and arrow slits housed watchful eyes. The very walls seemed alive with danger, ready to rain boiling oil on the unwary. The servants posed their own challenge, an army of eyes and ears moving through hidden passages and quiet corridors. One suspicious glance, one whispered word to the wrong person, and your cover as a humble herbalist would crumble like autumn leaves. Your targets lived in constant fear of shadow blades. They surrounded themselves with food tasters and bodyguards, slept behind triple-locked doors, and some even rotated bedchambers nightly like players in a deadly game of chance. Feasts were particularly treacherous opportunities. While wine flowed freely, you had to stay sharp, navigating past alert guards, avoiding suspicious dogs, and somehow remaining invisible among dozens of watchful eyes. Success often required weeks of preparation, learning servant routines, bribing the right people, finding the perfect hiding spot. When your moment finally came, there was no room for error. One perfect strike, then vanish like morning mist, or face a public execution. The reality of a medieval assassin's appearance shattered romantic notions. No flowing black robes or dramatic hoods. You dressed to disappear, to be forgotten. You were the sickly shepherd no one looked at twice, the limping merchant others pitied and ignored. Your disguises were whatever you could find: threadbare peasant clothes, ill-fitting monk's robes, or perhaps a guard's uniform still carrying the scent of its previous owner. Success meant looking as unremarkable as possible, just another unwashed face in a crowd of thousands. Time was your enemy in disguise. You had mere minutes before suspicion might grow, before someone noticed you didn't belong. Discovery could be catastrophic. Imagine being found in the bishop's private chambers, wearing stolen priestess robes, trying to explain away the dagger hidden in your prayer book. In this shadowy profession, you worked alone. No trusted companions, no wise mentors, no network of fellow killers. Your only allies were a sharp blade and sharper instincts. If whispers spoke of assassins' guilds, they were merely tavern tales, dreams born of too much ale and too little wisdom. Real assassins were more likely to encounter ghosts than colleagues willing to share their secrets. Isolation was your shield. Every person who knew your true nature was a potential betrayer. Even your employers remained strangers, names unspoken, faces unseen, trust non-existent. Relationships were impossible luxuries. Friends asked dangerous questions. Lovers noticed unexplained absences, mysterious wounds, the knife you kept beneath your pillow. One moment of recognition in a crowded market could send you fleeing into sewers, leaving everything behind. Other criminals avoided you like plague victims. Thieves and smugglers formed communities. You were the shadow they feared, the curse they whispered about. Who would break bread with someone whose very presence could bring death? Your conscience was your heaviest burden. There was no one to confide in after taking a life, no understanding ear to hear your doubts. Speaking of your deeds marked you as either a liar or a threat, and neither lasted long in medieval times. In taverns, you became part of the shadows, back to the wall, eyes on the door, nursing one drink all night. Your name changed with each town, your story with each listener. You were a ghost even before death claimed you. The life of a medieval assassin was a study in perpetual disappearance, not just from pursuers, but from the very possibility of a normal life. Imagine the moment of truth, your careful plans in place, your disguise perfect, your target in sight, and then something goes wrong. Perhaps they turn unexpectedly, or you glimpse their child's face, or your hand trembles at the crucial moment. Failure meant more than death. It meant spectacle. Medieval justice loved its theater, and failed assassins provided the grandest shows. The execution devices had names that made hardened criminals weep, tools designed not just to kill, but to warn. A failed attempt meant instant infamy. Your target survived to describe you, and soon crude sketches of your face decorated every tavern wall for leagues. You became the subject of gossip, rumors, and increasingly wild tales. Your employers proved more dangerous than your targets. A failed assassin was a loose end, a risk they couldn't afford. The same people who hired you would now pay others to ensure your silence. Second chances didn't exist in this profession. Each attempt was all or nothing. Success meant survival. Failure meant a painful end. The weight of this truth rode your shoulders like a lead cloak. Failure brought a special kind of shame. In a profession where reputation was everything, one mistake erased a lifetime of successes. Your past victories meant nothing. A dozen successful missions couldn't save you from one failure. In this deadly trade, you were only as good as your last job, and a failed job meant you were already dead. But success brought its own dangers. Picture it, the perfect strike, clean and quiet. Your target crumples silently, another soul sent to judgment, a masterpiece of death. Yet this was no moment for pride. Success meant immediate flight, running through torchlit alleys with blood still warm on your clothes, dogs baying in the distance, no time to celebrate, no moment to rest. In this profession, victory was measured in heartbeats between the kill and escape. After your blade found its mark, survival became your new mission. Guards would soon flood the streets, their torches casting long shadows against medieval walls. You were likely wounded, your breath coming in quiet gasps as you navigated through the labyrinth of narrow alleys. The aftermath of success brought its own perils. The city transformed into a cage of stone and steel, gates barred, checkpoints bristling with armed men. Your crude likeness passed from guard to guard with whispered warnings. Your employer, far from celebrating your success, for in the shadows of medieval justice, a successful assassin became both victor and fugitive. Your very competence marked you as a threat. You had proven yourself capable of breaching the strongest defenses, of moving unseen through guarded halls. Your reward, endless nights of restless vigilance, sleeping in haylofts that reeked of rain and horses, trading coin for silence with fairy masters, and perhaps finding temporary sanctuary among traveling monks. Your newly shaved head bowed in false prayer. Success meant perpetual motion, each victory forcing you to rebuild your identity in distant cities, where new eyes watched and new threats emerged from the shadows. The kill was merely the beginning of your ordeal. In the medieval mind, your profession carried a darker taint than mere murder. You existed in the realm of whispered curses and supernatural fears. To the common folk, you were more than a killer. You were a creature of dark magic, someone who conversed with spirits and painted deadly runes on your blade beneath the moon's cold light. Your ability to move unseen and strike without warning could only be explained through dark pacts and forbidden rituals. Tales of your supposed powers grew with each passing season. Some claimed you could turn invisible without holy water's touch. Others whispered that forest spirits guided your steps, and that death itself answered your call. Imagine passing through a village square, hearing mothers draw their children close, whispering protective prayers against your imagined sorcery. Your simplest tools became objects of supernatural dread, a common dagger transformed by rumor into a blade forged in hellfire. Your poisons said to be brewed with ingredients too terrible to name. Yet this fearsome reputation proved a double-edged sword. While some fled from your shadow, others formed into angry mobs, their fear turning to violent purpose. They needed no proof, no reasoning, only the spark of suspicion to ignite their fury. Any mysterious death, from illness to accident, could be laid at your feet. The Shadow Walker, they would whisper, the Deathbringer, and suddenly your very presence became a torch to kindle their darkest fears. Life as a medieval assassin meant constant movement. Even a whisper of suspicion in a village could turn deadly. Picture this. One moment you're quietly keeping to yourself. The next, a priest's bell echoes through cobbled streets while villagers emerge from shadows, pitchforks gleaming in torchlight. The smallest details could betray you. Dried herbs for medicine, foreign coins from past jobs, or simply an accent that marked you as different. In these superstitious times, that's all it took for whispers of sorcerer to spread like wildfire. The medieval world saw demons in every shadow. Your calculated silence, quick wit, or swift movements could mark you as otherworldly. And in an age where fear ruled hearts, suspected monsters met swift, fiery ends. Now, let's drift into the subtle art of medieval poisoning. Imagine the scene. A noble's feast hall, candlelight dancing on silver goblets. The promise of a quiet death floating in the wine. Such elegant simplicity. In theory, the reality. Instead, you foraged through dark woods for deadly mushrooms, gathered toxic plants by moonlight, perhaps even harvested venom from toads. Each attempt was a gamble. Too little merely caused discomfort. Too much might kill you before your target took their first sip. Medieval kitchens were labyrinths of chaos and protocol. Infiltrating one meant navigating a complex dance of servants, guards, and tasters. Noble households treated every meal like a military campaign. Multiple tasters sampling each dish, dogs sniffing for poison, priests blessing the food, and jesters entertaining while secretly watching for suspicious behavior. Your target's dinner passed through more hands than a royal crown. Even if fortune smiled and your poison reached its mark, timing became your enemy. Some poisons worked within hours, others took days. You might watch your target laugh through dessert, only to hear they collapsed in their chambers at dawn. Survival meant they'd hunt not just any suspect, but specifically the quiet stranger who knew too much about herbs. They faced specially designed tools of interrogation, their confessions extracted slowly, painfully, until they admitted to poisoning everyone from nobles to stable boys. Perhaps most ironic was the assassin's legacy, or lack thereof. Even if you changed history, toppled tyrants, ended dynasties, silenced threats, your name vanished like morning mist. Your greatest achievements became nothing more than mysterious deaths in dusty chronicles. Your clients craved deniability like a desert traveler craves water. The fewer whispers of your name, the safer everyone remained, especially your employer, who feared their own weapon might turn against them. Like morning mist, your identity dissolved the moment the deed was done. No signature, no bragging rights, no keepsakes. Your existence ended where your blade began. In this shadowy trade, legacy meant nothing. While knights earned medallions and poets crafted ballads, your finest work lived only in nervous glances and hushed warnings. Remember, Lord Ulrich, they'd whisper in taverns, but your name lost to the wind like autumn leaves. That was the art of it, not just taking life, but erasing your own. In medieval shadows, lasting fame meant lasting about as long as a snowflake in summer. You'd think survival earned you some peace. The target fell, the coin changed hands. Now, surely you could breathe easier. But medieval politics played by darker rules. Trust was as rare as a winter rose, especially when it came to those who paid your fee. These employers, be they silk-clad nobles or incense-wreathed bishops, did you not seek your services out of admiration? You were their shadow-bound solution, their dirty secret. Once the deed was done, you transformed from useful tool to dangerous liability. You knew their darkest wishes, their desperate bargains, their blood-soaked ledgers, so they'd vanish like spirits at dawn, denying your very existence. Sometimes worse, they'd ensure your silence with steel and silver, hiring another shadow to snuff out yours. Some particularly cautious clients even arranged a deadly dance. One assassin for the target, another for the first. A grim game of cleanup that left no loose ends. And if you dared suggest blackmail, well, medieval nobles didn't negotiate with shadows. They extinguished them. Even honorable clients, as rare as honest thieves, who paid in full and bid you farewell, kept watching. From castle windows and tavern corners, their eyes followed your path, their hands never far from their purses or their daggers. You were the secret they couldn't risk keeping, the shadow they couldn't allow to linger, because, in their minds, death's touch never truly washes clean, and yesterday's loyal blade might become tomorrow's threat. Imagine surviving against impossible odds, outlasting the kills, the betrayals, and even your own conscience. What then? Retirement. In the medieval world, assassins didn't get golden handshakes. No peaceful cottages awaited them. No comfortable pension sustained them. Their only options were to vanish into shadow or embrace the cold earth. Safety remained forever elusive. Even after leaving the trade, your past haunted you like a restless ghost. The weight of secrets pressed heavily. Too many whispered names, too much spilled blood. Those in power preferred their loose ends buried, not retired. And even if you escaped immediate revenge, paranoia became your constant companion. Every young killer with something to prove might have your name written on a contract. Life became an endless performance. You'd adopt a new identity, settle in some forgotten village, perhaps pose as a simple herbalist with a war-wound limp. Yet peace eluded you. Every meal found you facing the door. Every stranger's glance sent chills down your spine. That hidden dagger beneath your floorboards lay next to a pouch of blood money you couldn't bring yourself to spend. Your mind, shaped by years of shadows and swift deaths, betrayed you most of all. Simple sounds, a knock, a footstep, sent your heart racing. Casual encounters became threat assessments. The truth revealed itself slowly. There was no glorious end for a medieval assassin, only a gradual fading into obscurity, forever watchful, until one day the shadows claimed you completely. Perhaps that was mercy enough. This wasn't some romantic tale of skillful, shadowy figures, and brief, a blood-soaked trade that offered nothing but a shortened life and a nameless grave. Reality would shatter your illusions quickly. Instead of being the masterful shadow walker, you'd find yourself cold, hungry, and one misstep from the gallows. Your carefully laid plans would crumble when your target changed locations. The guards proved more alert than expected, or your paid informant betrayed you for a mere loaf of bread. Every mission became a comedy of errors waiting to happen. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, one glimpse of your face by a servant near the chapel, and suddenly you're marked. Running through medieval streets wasn't like the stories, muddy cobblestones. You'd live as a ghost among whispers and suspicions, knowing that your greatest achievement would be dying quietly in some distant village, your true name long forgotten. The life of an assassin was an adventure. It was a grinding wheel that turned people into shadows. In the grand dance of power that was ancient Macedonia, few figures cast as long a shadow as Olympias. Born myrtle in the wild lands of Epirus, she carried the legendary blood of Achilles in her veins. Whether true or not, one thing was certain: mediocrity would never be her destiny. Unlike the demure princesses of her time, she found her calling in the sacred mysteries, among serpents, prophecies, and the ecstatic rites of Dionysus. Under moonlit skies, she joined the sacred dances, her bare feet moving to rhythms as ancient as the gods themselves. Her spiritual connection transcended mere ritual. She lived it, breathed it, embodied it. Ancient chroniclers, their words tinged with equal parts fear and fascination, spoke of her intimate relationship with sacred serpents, how she kept them as companions in her private chambers. Whether truth or slander, these tales served their purpose. To her followers, she was touched by divinity. To her enemies, she was a force to be feared. Her true power emerged not from physical might, but from the ethereal spaces between shadows and flames, where priestesses whispered prophecies and sacred serpents wound their way through ancient rites. She wasn't merely royal by birth. She was a vessel of divine will, touched by forces beyond mortal understanding. When destiny brought her face to face with Philip II of Macedon, a man equally brilliant and infamous at Samothrace, it wasn't just a meeting of two nobles. It was a collision of raw ambition and divine prophecy. Their union sparked with supernatural omens, lightning splitting the wedding night sky, dreams of divine conception. From this union would come not just a child, but Alexander the Great, whose destiny Olympias would shape from his first breath. Their marriage proved as volatile as the omens that heralded it. Philip, too, though a political genius, collected wives like others collected wine cups. Yet Olympias was no ordinary consort. She maintained her own power base, consulted oracles about their shared future, and perhaps even wove Philip's fate into her mystical practices. While Philip's eye wandered to other wives, particularly for political advantage, Olympias refused to fade into the background. She cultivated her own influence, maintained powerful alliances, and continued her mysterious rites, perhaps seeking divine guidance, or perhaps plotting her next move in the deadly game of power. Alexander's birth was a tapestry of mystical omens and divine portents, dreams of lightning striking her womb, not destroying, but blessing. Flames dance around her unborn child like ethereal guardians, leaving him untouched. Meanwhile, Philip envisions something equally extraordinary, a majestic lion sealing his wife's womb. These weren't mere dreams to them. They were prophecies, whispering of a child destined for greatness beyond mere kingship. Yet beneath these celestial celebrations, dark clouds gathered. The palace's delicate balance began to crack as Olympias watched Philip's attention drift toward other wives. His marriage to Cleopatra Eurydice was unjust another royal union. It was a dagger aimed at Alexander's future. Being Macedonian-born, Cleopatra's children would carry a legitimacy that threatened Alexander's claim to the throne. In response, Olympias transformed. Gone was the mystical priestess of Epirus. In her place stood a mother lioness, protecting her cub. The palace became her arena, where every whispered word was a weapon, every ritual a shield. She wielded influence like a master weaver, threading alliances and prophecies into a protective tapestry around her son. As Alexander grew into his teenage years, the palace at Pella became a battlefield of whispers and shadows. While others played at court politics, Olympias orchestrated a symphony of power moves. Philip's increasing distance, his campaigns, his drinking, his newfound trust in Macedonian advisors only sharpened her resolve. The situation reached its breaking point with Philip's marriage to the young Cleopatra Eurydice, niece to his powerful general Attalus. For Olympias, this wasn't merely betrayal. It was an act of war against her son's destiny. During the wedding feast, a fateful moment crystallized the conflict. Attalus, loosened by wine, dared to question Alexander's legitimacy. "Is he Philip's son, or the child of some god?" he sneered. But Olympias, ever the strategist, transformed the insult into power. If they wished to believe her son was divine, let them. Such whispers only added to his untouchable aura. When Alexander stormed from the feast in rage, Olympias made her own calculated retreat to Epirus. But don't mistake this for surrender. It was a masterstroke. From her homeland, where she remained a queen in her own right, she could weave her web of influence from afar. She proved that physical presence was unnecessary for power. Sometimes, the most dangerous player is the one you cannot see. Picture this, a hushed wedding celebration, suddenly shattered by violence. Philip, the mighty king of Macedon, falls at his daughter's wedding. Just as he stood ready to launch a grand invasion of Persia, the whispers begin, echoing through candlelit corridors and shadowy halls. Who orchestrated this perfect storm of assassination? Was it truly Pausanias, the vengeful bodyguard whose blade struck true? Or did darker forces move in those shadows? Perhaps Alexander himself, or his formidable mother, Olympias. Like ripples in a still pond, the consequences spread swiftly. Within mere days, Cleopatra Eurydice, Philip's young queen, and her innocent child vanished from the world. Many fingers pointed to Olympias, though none dared speak their accusations above a whisper. The Serpent Queen had returned, and the path to Alexander's throne now lay clear. In the ensuing chaos, Olympias moved like a master player in a deadly game. While others floundered in confusion, she acted with chilling precision. The fate of Cleopatra Eurydice became a dark legend. Some say she was forced to witness her infant's death before taking her own life, while others whisper of a tiny body consigned to flames. The message was clear. In this game of thrones, mercy was a luxury none could afford. With surgical precision, Olympias cleared every obstacle from Alexander's path. Her teenage son, already brilliant and Aristotle-trained, ascended to the throne virtually unopposed. But make no mistake, it was unjust his natural charisma, or his father's legacy, that smoothed his way. Behind every successful threat, every strategic flattery, every convenient disappearance, stood Olympias, the architect of his destiny. Even Alexander, for all his greatness, found himself troubled by his mother's methods. The brutality against Cleopatra's family left a bitter taste. Yet he understood, perhaps better than most, the iron law of Macedonian power. Blood pays for blood, and crowns are forged in fire. As Alexander prepared for his Persian campaign, Olympias stepped back from the spotlight. But don't mistake shadow for weakness. She became something more subtle, more powerful, a spiritual guardian of her son's destiny. Sacred relics passed from her hands to his, prophetic whispers guided his steps, and ancient rituals marked his path. In Olympias's mind, Alexander wasn't merely marching to war, he was fulfilling divine prophecy. She had cleared his path, crowned him king, and now she would ensure his destiny from afar. Let others see a queen mother in retirement. She remained a lioness in the shadows, ready to bare her teeth at any threat to her son's ordained path. In the wake of Alexander's eastern conquests, Olympias maintained her grip on power from Macedon like a spider at the center of her web. Though officially just the Queen Mother, her influence stretched far beyond her title. Even with Antipater as regent, her authority remained undiminished. Her letters to Alexander were mere maternal correspondence. They were carefully crafted missives, dripping with political intrigue and divine prophecy, each word chosen to shape the future of an empire. Like a priestess reading sacred omens, she whispered warnings into Alexander's ear from across continents. She cast doubt on his companion's loyalties, challenged his embrace of Persian ways, and questioned his divine aspirations. Her words carried weight that no other dared claim, speaking as both mother and oracle. Meanwhile, in Macedon, she waged a subtle war against Antipater, wielding rumor and religion like twin daggers. Her network of influence spreading through Epirus, Thessaly, and beyond like poison in a chalice. Her messages grew more desperate as time passed, painting Antipater as a lurking threat, another Philip waiting to usurp power. Whether driven by genuine concern or fear of losing control, she pressed Alexander relentlessly. He hesitated, caught between maternal warnings and military necessity, as Antipater's firm hand kept Greece stable during his Asian campaigns. But beneath her ceremonial robes and motherly facade, a storm was brewing. This priestess queen, who had orchestrated palace intrigues for decades, wouldn't bow to a mere general. As Alexander's empire stretched toward India's shores, she watched with growing unease as he embraced foreign customs and advisors, drifting from the mother and gods who had shaped his destiny. His triumphs, she believed, flowed from divine favor, her favor, and she knew well how to remind kings of their true source of power, even when that king was her own flesh and blood. When word of Alexander's death in Babylon reached Macedon in 323 BCE, it struck like a serpent's bite, swift, silent, deadly. For Olympias, it wasn't just the loss of a son, it was the shattering of her life's work. The divine storm she had prophesied and nurtured lay still in death, leaving behind no clear successor. His vast empire, built on lightning and prophecy, began crumbling as his generals circled like vultures, each claiming their piece of the corpse. In Macedon, Antipater's hostility cast a long shadow, while her daughter, Cleopatra, became a prize in a deadly game, courted by ambitious generals seeking legitimacy through royal blood. Olympias saw the approaching tempest of civil war with the clarity of an oracle reading entrails. Conflict was inevitable, and she would need to act decisively. But while Alexander was gone, his legacy lived on in his infant son, Alexander the Fourth, born to his Bactrian bride, Roxana. Mother and child remained in Macedon, vulnerable as fawns in a wolf's den. Olympias recognized in this child both the last ember of her son's divine flame and a weapon to wield in the coming chaos. With the cunning that had served her for decades, she allied herself with Roxana and the boy, determined to protect her grandson while using his birthright to maintain her grip on power in this dangerous new world. Time's tides shifted like sand through an hourglass. The once loyal generals who had knelt before Alexander now stood tall, their hearts hardened by ambition. These men, who had shared bread and victory with their king, turned their backs on his legacy, refusing to bow to either his widow or his formidable mother. Each now commanded their own armies, nursed their own dreams of empire, and harbored their own bitter grudges. Yet Olympias remained unshaken, like a weathered cliff facing a storm. She had danced with serpents, outmaneuvered traitors, and stood eye to eye with kings. These new warlords, despite their stolen crowns and borrowed might, were merely shadows of the greatness she had known. In the quiet hours of night, she wove her plans with patient precision, watching as old Antipater's death gave way to his son Cassander's rise, a man whose armies bloomed like dark flowers across the land, whose coffers ran deeper than mines, and whose heart held a coldness that rivaled winter itself. As allies melted away like morning frost and Polyperchon's influence waned, Olympias found herself alone within Pydna's stone embrace. The fortress that had once been her haven became her cage, as enemies gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. She had ignited a flame that had consumed Macedonia, and now the smoke of her own making threatened to choke her. In Pydna's echoing halls, the once mighty Queen Mother faced her darkest hour. No longer did courtiers fill her chambers with honeyed words. Now only the whispers of the wind kept her company. For nearly a year, she endured the siege with the same unyielding pride that had marked her reign. As provisions dwindled and disease stalked the corridors, she remained unbowed, her presence as commanding as when she had ruled from a throne. Cassander, shrewd as a desert serpent, approached her fate with calculated patience. Even now, Olympias's name carried power. She was the mother of a legend, the woman who had given birth to a god-king. To strike her down carelessly might invoke divine wrath. His offer of clemency came wrapped in false mercy. Surrender and live. But Olympias, veteran of countless court intrigues, recognized the poison hidden in this promise. Yet, as hunger transformed from discomfort to destiny, her fortress's defenses crumbled like stale bread, and her loyal followers, one by one, laid down their arms. Her end came not with the swift mercy of the sword, but through Cassander's cruel genius. He placed her fate in the hands of those who had most reason to hate her, the families of those she had ordered executed. They pronounced their verdict with cold satisfaction. But when the moment of execution came, an extraordinary thing occurred. Not one Macedonian would strike the fatal blow. She stood before them, this diminished yet still regal figure, her gaze penetrating their souls like an oracle reading the future. These men, raised on tales of her mystical powers and divine connections, found their weapons too heavy to lift. In the end, it took foreigners, men unburdened by superstition or memory, to carry out the sentence. Olympias fell not to Macedonian steel, but to strangers' blades, her death as unceremonious as it was final. With her past the last true link to Alexander's divine legacy, the final flame of an empire built on dreams of godhood extinguished in common dust. Yet death was not the end of Olympias's story. Her legend grew in the telling, like shadows lengthening at sunset. She had wielded motherhood as others wielded swords, and prophecy as others bore shields. Her influence had shaped an empire. Her ambition had moved mountains, and her determination had carved a path for her son to become more than mortal. Among history's great power players, Olympias carved her own unique path. Unlike Cleopatra's military campaigns or Boudicca's battlefield glory, her arena was the shadowed corridor, the whispered word, the carefully placed drop of poison. She was a grand master of the subtle arts, political marriages, prophetic utterances, and sacred rituals. All became weapons in her skilled hands. Her greatest strength lay in understanding the architecture of belief. She didn't just propagate the myth of her son's divinity. She breathed life into it, perhaps even coming to embrace it herself. Her reputation as murderer, witch, and manipulator was well learned, yet these were merely the tools she used to survive in a world where mercy was a luxury few could afford. Time has painted her in shades of both light and shadow. Some historians cast her as villain, others as visionary, but none can deny her impact. She remains a phantom in Alexander's story, a presence felt but rarely seen, pulling strings from behind history's curtain. Perhaps this is her truest legacy, not as a footnote in a great man's tale, but as a force of nature in her own right. The woman who dared to birth gods, who walked with serpents, and who proved that sometimes the most powerful magic lies not in divine thunderbolts, but in a mother's relentless ambition. Time has turned Olympias's bones to dust, but her legacy whispers through history like a restless spirit. In every tale of cunning queens, in the echoes of divine prophecies, and in the shadows of empires built on destiny, her presence lingers, a reminder that true power often lies in the spaces between thrones. Let us drift now to another realm of ancient mystery, where stone speaks of forgotten grandeur. On the sun-kissed shores of Crete, mere miles from modern Heracleion, stands a monument to human ingenuity that feels plucked from dreams. Here, in the legendary Knossos, corridors wind like sleeping serpents, rooms fold back upon themselves, and staircases seem to chase their own shadows. Even today, visitors find themselves lost in its gentle maze, a perfect setting for our journey into peaceful slumber. Before myth cloaked these stones, in legend, Knossos was a marvel of ancient engineering. Rising around 1900 BCE and growing through centuries like a living thing. This wasn't merely a palace, it was an entire city embraced within a single structure. Imagine wandering through its 150,000 square feet, where thousands of rooms hosted everything from sacred shrines to humble workshops. Here, in this cradle of civilization, you might have found the world's first flushing toilets, watching clear water course through elegant pipes, while cool breezes drifted through cleverly designed air channels. To archaeologists who study these weathered stones, Knossos presents a beautiful puzzle. But to those who walked its halls in ancient times, it must have seemed touched by divine hands. When British archaeologist Arthur Evans first uncovered these ruins in the early 1900s, he found himself drawn into a world where reality and mythology danced together. Every turn revealed another wonder, bulls painted with loving detail, their powerful forms eternally frozen in motion, golden charms that caught the Mediterranean light, and symbols that spoke of sacred mysteries. Evans was so moved by the site's majesty that he named the entire civilization after the legendary king Minos. Yet here's where our story takes an intriguing turn. While no one has found the mythical labyrinth of legend, no underground maze housing half-human monsters, what remains is perhaps more enchanting. These ancient architects created something far more subtle, a city that flows like water, its passages and chambers arranged in elegant complexity, as if designed to mirror the mysteries of life itself. As you venture deeper into its quiet corridors, the line between history and myth dissolves like morning mist, leaving only wonder in its wake. Picture, if you will, an ancient question that still echoes through time. Did these mysterious walls give birth to the legend of the Minotaur, or was the palace itself the true beast? Like a gentle lullaby, Gnosis whispers its secrets, never quite revealing the full truth, but always inviting us to wonder. Let me share with you the haunting tale that has drifted through centuries. Deep within an impossibly intricate labyrinth dwelled a creature of nightmare, half-man, half-bull, in chambers so bewildering that entering meant certain doom. Only one hero, Theseus of Athens, armed with nothing but courage, and a simple ball of thread gifted by the clever Princess Ariadne, managed to face the beast and emerge victorious. Who demanded a terrible tribute from Athens, 7 youths and 7 maidens. This fearsome minotaur, born of divine wrath, represented something darker still, the shadow side of power and civilization. To the Greeks of that age, Crete was like a dream made real, wealthy beyond imagination, mysterious as twilight, and slightly terrifying. Its people, the Minoans, must have seemed like characters from another world entirely, with their exotic, bull-leaping ceremonies, unfamiliar deities, and palaces that defied conventional design. Imagine being a Greek visitor in 1000 BCE, stepping into this alien landscape. As you drift deeper into sleep, envision the graceful figures in their frescoes, dancing with death as they vault over charging bulls in sacred ritual. But here's a soothing thought to ponder as you rest. Perhaps the Minotaur was more than just a monster. Perhaps it was a metaphor wrapped in the soft blanket of myth. Some scholars suggest it represents a half-remembered time when Crete truly did rule the waves, when Athens and other cities paid tribute to this strange and powerful civilization. The labyrinth might symbolize the complex web of political influence that trapped weaker states, while the Minotaur embodied the raw, untamed force of Minoan dominance. Mysterious minds, the Minotaur as our hidden fears, and brave Theseus as the part of us that dares to face the darkness, guided by memory's gentle thread. What remains is something far more captivating, a place where history itself yearned to become legend. They chose a different path to power, not through conquering armies, but through the quiet strength of trade, the beauty of art, and an almost magical mastery of architecture. At their heart stood Gnosis, more than just a royal residence. It was the soul of their world, where culture, ceremony, and commerce danced together in perfect harmony. From 2600 to 1400 BCE, like silent dreams across the Mediterranean, their ships wove a vast web of trade, touching the shores of Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Levant, and even distant Spain. Their true wealth lay not in weapons, but in the bridges they built between worlds. Close your eyes and see how different they were from the Greeks who would follow. Where others carved tales of war, the Minoans painted life itself. Graceful dancers swaying like reeds, playful dolphins leaping through azure waves, and brave athletes in their sacred dance with bulls, not perched high like a fortress, but nestled in a fertile valley, its open design speaking of a people so secure in their power they needed no mighty walls. Like a dream half-remembered, their genius lives on in stone. Multi-story buildings reached for the sky. Elegant courtyards welcomed the sun. Yet some mysteries remain forever sealed. Their writing, Linear A, keeps its secrets still. What dreams they shared within Nas's embracing walls. Their legacy flows like honey through time. In their ruins, their artistry. The Minoans were more than builders. They were dreamweavers, crafting not just palaces but mysteries. Though some say its spirit still dances through the maze. Let your mind wander through Nasus as it was, a living poem written in stone. Each step reveals new wonders, rooms flowing into rooms like gentle streams, corridors branching like growing vines, light wells piercing the heart of stone. Stairways spiral into shadow before emerging into sun-blessed courtyards. Nothing here follows the harsh lines of later architecture. Everything moves like water, like dreams. No wonder those who came after spoke of labyrinths. Nasus breathed like a living thing, its 150,000 square feet holding 1,000 chambers, each with its own purpose. Workshops hummed with activity, storerooms guarded treasures, shrines held sacred mysteries, and grand apartments housed the powerful. At its heart, a central courtyard witnessed ceremonies we can only imagine. Perhaps the famous bull-leaping rituals that still capture our imagination, rising 4 or 5 stories high, using both natural slopes and crafted terraces. The palace required more than mere eyes to navigate. It demanded understanding, intuition, or perhaps, like Theseus, a guiding thread. Yet, within this seeming maze lay brilliant design. Clever air shafts carried cool breezes, clay pipes channeled life-giving water, and advanced plumbing brought comfort millennia before Rome's famous baths. Drift now into the throne room, where mystery still reigns. An alabaster chair, eternally waiting, is flanked by benches and watched over by painted griffins. Was this where priests communed with gods, where a goddess received offerings, or where earthly rulers dispensed justice? The walls themselves tell stories in vibrant color. Dolphins dancing above ancient baths, women in elegant dress moving with timeless grace. Young athletes suspended in eternal flight above powerful bulls. This wasn't mere decoration. It was the soul of a people, flowing like water, natural as breath, connected to earth and sea as intimately as dreams are connected to sleep. As you venture deeper into Nasus, the palace begins to play tricks with your mind. Its corridors twist and turn like threads in a dream. Some passages seemingly designed to disorient visitors. Perhaps this is where the labyrinth legend truly began, not as a cage for monsters, but as a living, breathing structure that inspired both wonder and gentle unease. Like a whispered lullaby, the palace beckons you forward, making you wonder what secrets await around each corner. Imagine drifting through this sacred space where administration and divinity merged seamlessly. Unlike the stark grandeur of later Greek temples, Nasus whispers its spirituality through subtle details, hidden shrines nestled in quiet corners, majestic pillars standing like silent guardians, and sacred horns adorning rooftops and altars like crown jewels. Let your mind wander to the omnipresent bull imagery, a symbol of the Minoans' deep connection to nature and divinity. In the famous bull leaping fresco, young athletes perform an ethereal dance with these powerful creatures, not merely for sport, but as a sacred ritual. Picture their graceful forms suspended in eternal motion, performing this dangerous ballet as an offering to their gods. In the peaceful shadows beneath the palace, the remarkable snake goddess figurines tell their own story. These powerful figures, with serpents coiling around their upraised arms, stand as guardians of hearth and home. Their presence transforms ordinary storerooms into sacred spaces where the boundary between mundane and divine dissolves like morning mist. Together with the mesmerizing frescoes, ceremonial horns, and winding corridors, Nasus becomes more than architecture. It becomes a bridge between earth and heaven. Here, every stone whispered prayers, every corridor could become a path to the divine. Nasus wasn't simply a palace with temples, it was itself a temple, where everyday life and sacred ritual danced together in perfect harmony. The very walls seemed to breathe with divine presence. For centuries, this magnificent palace temple flourished as a beacon of culture and innovation. Then, like a dream fading at dawn, something changed. By 1400 BCE, its halls fell silent, its vibrant frescoes dimmed, and the mighty Minoan civilization simply vanished. The mystery of this decline still lulls us to contemplation. Some historians point to nature's fury. Around 1600 BCE, the nearby island of Thera erupted in one of history's most powerful volcanic explosions. Imagine the scene. Massive tsunamis battering Crete's northern shores, thick ash clouds dimming the life-giving sun, and the gradual unraveling of an empire. While Nasus survived the initial catastrophe, this event may have begun a slow unwinding of its power, like a thread gradually pulling loose from a tapestry. Let your mind drift to a different ending of the Minoan tale. Around 1450 BCE, the powerful Mycenaeans from mainland Greece began to cast their shadow over Nasus. Like a gentle tide that slowly reshapes the shore, they didn't storm the palace, they transformed it. The graceful artworks that once celebrated life and nature gave way to martial themes, while the mysterious linear A script faded into linear B, carrying whispers of a new culture. Imagine walking through those changing halls where snake goddesses and bull dancers once danced. The Mycenaean influence wove itself into the fabric of Minoan life, first through peaceful trade, then through growing influence, until finally their presence became rule. Yet the most intriguing part of this transformation is what we do unfind. No scenes of violence, no evidence of brutal conquest. Instead, like a candle slowly dimming, Nasus simply faded. The grand ceremonies ceased, the corridors grew quiet, and the once mighty palace system gently slipped into slumber. As your eyes grow heavy, picture how by Homer's time, Knossos had already become legend, a dreamlike tale of kings, monsters, and mysterious mazes. Perhaps this was fitting, for Knossos wasn't conquered by sword alone, but by time itself, that patient force that turns all great works to memory. Yet even now, beneath the earth, the ancient stones still whisper their secrets. Now, let your thoughts drift to a more recent chapter. For millennia, Knossos slept beneath Cretan soil, its glory hidden under olive groves and wind-swept dust, until one dreamer, Sir Arthur Evans, followed the thread of legend in 1900. This British archaeologist, whose passion for Homer's tales matched his scientific curiosity, purchased the land where local farmers had discovered curious artifacts. He unveiled something extraordinary, a palace of such complexity and grandeur that he knew he'd found more than ruins. He'd discovered the seed of legend itself. The sprawling architecture, the mysterious frescoes, the ritual horns, all seemed to whisper of that ancient maze where myth and history danced as one. Like a poet writing in concrete and imagination, he christened these ancient people Minoans, after the legendary king Minos. His controversial vision reshaped Knossos using modern materials, creating a curious blend of authentic ruins and Victorian interpretation, a marriage of past and present that still sparks debate among scholars today. Let your thoughts float to Evans' remarkable achievement. Through careful excavation and bold reconstruction, he unveiled a world that had slumbered beneath Cretan soil for 3 millennia. His work revealed a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization that flourished long before classical Greece. The mysterious linear A script he discovered remained silent, like a lullaby in an unknown tongue. Imagine standing where Evans once stood, watching as each layer of earth peeled away, revealed, more captivating than any myth. After 3,000 years of silence, Evans' gentle persistence awakened Knossos from its ancient slumber. As sleep draws nearer, envision yourself walking through Knossos' hushed corridors. Every surface tells a story through symbols, delicate frescoes, without a Rosetta Stone to unlock Linear A's secrets. We must read their legacy in pictures, letting the walls whisper their tales through art alone. Unlike the martial glory celebrated by later civilizations, Knossos art speaks in gentler rhythms. Here, you'll find no parade of conquering kings or battle scenes. Instead, the walls bloom with life itself. Graceful dolphins arcing through waves, delicate lilies opening to the sun, birds soaring on painted winds, and sacred bulls moving with dignified power. In every scene, human figures dance and flow with natural grace, their movements frozen in eternal celebration of life's rhythms and nature's order. As your eyelids grow heavy, consider the double axe, the labyrinth, perhaps Knossos' most significant symbol. This sacred emblem appears everywhere, carved into shrine walls, adorning frescoes etched into ancient stones. Some scholars believe it represented divine feminine power or celestial cycles. The word labyrinth itself might trace back to labyrinth, suggesting that the legendary maze was never meant as a prison, but as a sacred house of the double axe, a sanctuary where divine and mortal realms intersected in perfect harmony. Let your mind drift to the sacred bull horns, the horns of consecration that crowned the walls and altars of Knossos. Like silent guardians, these stylized horns marked the boundary between earthly and divine realms. In the gentle whispers of sleep, Consider how the bull's presence permeated every aspect of Minoan life. The bull's spirit echoes through every corner of Knossos. As your thoughts grow heavier, imagine how the very layout of Knossos might mirror the cosmos itself. Like a dream within a dream, its winding passages and nested chambers could represent life's great journey, from birth through death to rebirth. Without their ancient script to guide us, we can only follow these architectural whispers, like breadcrumbs through time. The Minoans left us not with words, but with symbols, a visual lullaby that still enchants us today. Their message floats just beyond our grasp, like stars we can see but never touch. Though Knossos lies in ruins, it pulses with an energy that transcends time, not supernatural, but deeply human, carrying echoes of lives lived, rituals performed, and mysteries still unsolved. Even now, thousands of years later, Knossos holds us in its gentle embrace. Archaeologists pursuing truth, writers chasing inspiration. The Minotaur may be myth, but the labyrinth's spell remains real. And understood the delicate dance between the practical and the divine. Before the glory of classical Greece, before mighty Rome, before the great temples of the ancient world, Knossos stood as something unique. A palace that was a city that was a temple that was a story. Perhaps this is the true nature of the labyrinth, not a maze to trap monsters, but a narrative carved in stone, a prayer made permanent in architecture. As sleep draws near, consider how the legend of the Minotaur emerged from these very halls. It grew from the mystery of these corridors, the sanctity of the bull rituals, and the awe felt by generations trying to understand this remarkable place. The Greeks wove it into legend. We study it as archaeology. But Knossos transcends both. It remains a bridge between myth and reality, forever inviting us deeper into its mysteries. Today, as we wander through Knossos in the gentle Mediterranean sun, its ancient stones whisper stories of a civilization lost to time. Though we capture its image in countless photographs and carefully map every corridor, something ethereal remains just beyond our grasp. Like a dream half remembered upon waking, the boundary between historical fact and mythological legend dances before us like a mirage in the desert heat. Perhaps this is Knossos's greatest gift, not its answers, but its questions. For in these weathered walls and faded frescoes, we find not just artifacts, but echoes of human stories waiting to be felt rather than simply studied. Here, in this labyrinth of memory and mystery, each step draws us deeper into contemplation, much like Theseus following Ariadne's thread into the heart of legend. In the realm of ancient military innovation, the story of the battering ram unfolds like a symphony of destruction. Picture the earliest versions. Groups of determined soldiers hefting massive tree trunks, their coordinated movements reminiscent of ancient drumbeats as they rhythmically struck at enemy fortifications. This primitive yet effective tool soon evolved into something far more sophisticated, a deadly instrument housed within a wheeled fortress, sheltered beneath a protective roof that shielded its operators from the desperate defenders above. The Assyrians, those brilliant architects of siege warfare, transformed these simple battering rams into engines of psychological warfare. Their innovative design merged the raw power of the ram with elevated archer platforms, creating a terrifying dual threat. While the ram methodically destroyed the city gates below, archers rained death from above. Imagine the sight at Nineveh, these iron-tipped harbingers of doom, advancing like unstoppable leviathans toward the trembling gates of rebellious cities. These versatile weapons proved equally effective against walls, watchtowers, and gates, their very presence an ultimatum carved in wood and iron. From these foundations, the Greeks refined the concept with mathematical precision, while the Romans elevated it to an art form. Their massive Ares, named for the ram constellation, hung from chains within siege shelters so vast they required small armies to operate. As these behemoths struck their targets, witnesses described a sound like rolling thunder, a deep, resonant boom that announced the imminent fall of yet another city's defenses. Picture this as you drift towards sleep, the mighty battering ram, a dance of coordinated strength. Teams of soldiers moved as one, swinging their wooden giant while dodging a rain of defensive horrors from above, burning oil, jagged stones, and worse. Like a slumbering beast, a stationary ram invited destruction. But once it found its rhythm, its steady heartbeat of strikes became unstoppable. Nature's own force turned against human-made walls. This was just the beginning of humanity's creative journey in siege warfare. As your mind floats deeper, imagine the evolution from brute force to tactical precision. The catapult, while rams demanded intimate combat with walls, catapults introduced a new kind of warfare, one that struck from afar, sowing not just destruction, but terror in defenders' hearts. These machines weren't mere weapons. They were the first true artillery, transforming siege warfare into something that must have seemed like sorcery to those who faced them. Let your thoughts drift to ancient Greece around the 4th century BCE. Here, brilliant minds like Dionysius of Syracuse dreamed up the first torsion-powered catapults. These ingenious devices used twisted sinew or hair to store energy, like a coiled spring waiting to unleash its power. They weren't crude throwing machines, but precisely engineered instruments of siegecraft. As sleep draws nearer, consider the elegant physics at play. Engineers discovered that tightly twisted ropes, crafted from animal sinew, could hold immense potential energy. When released, this stored force could send stones, massive bolts, or flaming missiles soaring hundreds of meters through the air. Two main varieties emerged: the ballista, essentially a massive crossbow, and the stone-throwing catapult, hurling boulders at fortress walls. The Romans, Ever the practical innovators took these Greek designs and made them their own. With characteristic efficiency, they created portable versions that could be dismantled, moved, and rebuilt where needed, perfect for their professional armies. Some of these machines could launch 60-pound stones with devastating accuracy, turning solid fortifications into rubble. In your drowsy contemplation, consider how catapults became more than weapons. They were instruments of psychological warfare. Commanders used them to send grim messages, launching corpses over walls to spread disease and fear, or firing severed heads into cities to break the defender's spirit. In one dark chapter, they even hurled diseased bodies, an early, haunting form of biological warfare. As your eyelids grow heavy, remember that these machines weren't perfect. Their bulk made them cumbersome. They needed expert crews to operate, and rough terrain could render them useless. Yet, when properly deployed, they could reduce a city's defenses from a safe distance. For the first time, thick walls needed to guard against threats from above, as death could now rain from the skies. Finally, as you drift towards dreams, picture the trebuchet, the true monarch of medieval siege engines. Standing tall and ominous, its very presence was a message to defenders. No wall was safe. Unlike its spring-powered predecessors, the trebuchet harnessed gravity itself. Picture its simple yet elegant design, a long arm balanced on a frame, with a heavy counterweight on one end and a sling on the other. When the weight fell, the arm would sweep upward, launching its payload in a perfect arc over the highest walls. It was warfare elevated to art, methodical, predictable, and utterly devastating. Picture yourself drifting to sleep as we explore the fascinating evolution of siege weapons. The trebuchet story begins in ancient China during the 4th century BCE, where early models relied on human power instead of counterweights. It wasn't until the 12th century that the counterweight trebuchet emerged, revolutionizing warfare across Europe and the Islamic world through Byzantine and Muslim influences. Like a gentle wave spreading across a pond, this innovation rippled through medieval fortifications. Let the peaceful rhythm of history wash over you as we contemplate these mighty machines. A well-crafted trebuchet could softly launch 300-pound stones through graceful arcs spanning 300 meters. These projectiles would quietly reshape castle walls and courtyards. Beyond simple stones, these machines launched various items, from messages wrapped in cloth to creative diplomatic statements, each following its own peaceful trajectory through the air. Drift deeper as we remember the legendary werewolf at Stirling Castle, a trebuchet so impressive that its mere presence prompted surrender. Though powerful, these machines moved at nature's own unhurried pace, taking hours to construct and minutes between launches, like the steady rhythm of ocean waves. Now imagine, as your mind grows calmer, the siege towers, those wooden giants quietly approaching castle walls. These mobile fortresses, protected by water-soaked hides and housing patient archers, were like slow-moving mountains of wood and iron. The Assyrians pioneered these towers, but it was the Greeks who refined them into works of art. Let your thoughts float to Rhodes in 305 BCE, where Demetrius built the 9-story Heliopolis, taker of cities. Though it ultimately proved too heavy for its own foundations, its ambition speaks to us across centuries. As your breathing slows, consider how siege towers transformed warfare from a horizontal game to a vertical dance. These towers created elevated platforms where soldiers could gently step onto battlements, while archers above provided covering fire like falling autumn leaves. Picture the careful defenders responding with clever countermeasures, digging moats, flooding ditches, building secondary walls. These defensive works turned each siege into a slow, methodical chess game. As sleep draws nearer, let's descend below ground, where siege engineers practice their quiet art of tunneling. Like patient moles, they would dig beneath mighty walls, supporting their tunnels with wooden beams before setting them aflame. The earth itself became their ally in this silent warfare. Imagine the Spartans at Plataea in 429 BCE, their tunneling met by counter-tunnels in the dark earth. Underground, soldiers moved like shadows, listening for the soft tapping of enemy picks. These quiet battles beneath the earth added another layer to siege warfare's complex tapestry. Consider the siege of Rochester Castle in 1212, where King John's forces used pig fat to bring down a tower from below. The earth opened like a sleepy yawn, and the defenses crumbled into history. By the 13th century, siege engineers had become masters of their craft, reading the earth's secrets like a bedtime story. They understood soil and stone, pressure and collapse, turning geology into a gentle art of war. As your mind drifts toward dreams, remember the defenders and their creative responses. The mysterious Greek fire, developed by the Byzantines, danced across water like liquid starlight. Through murder holes, defenders would pour hot sand and oil, using gravity as their silent ally. In this twilight world of siege warfare, every element served the art of delay. Each passing hour brought hope of rescue, or the quiet victory of attrition. The real battle was often fought in the mind, as siege engines became symbols of inevitable change, their presence alone enough to whisper doubts into the hearts of defenders. Let sleep approach as you imagine ancient commanders understanding this delicate dance of psychology. The Assyrians would parade their siege engines like pieces in a grand theater, while Romans built their camps in full view, letting anticipation do their work. In the end, siege warfare was as much about patience and presence as it was about force, a slow, inexorable tide of history washing against the shores of resistance. As you drift deeper into relaxation, imagine the creative ways siege weaponry conveyed messages in a haunting display. Commanders would sometimes launch severed heads over fortress walls, still adorned in their battle gear, a silent but potent warning. During Constantinople's siege, the quiet night air would be broken by the soft thuds of more than just stones. Bodies were used as psychological weapons. In the haunting siege of Kaffa in 1346, the Mongols introduced an eerily effective tactic, launching plague-infected bodies over the walls, inadvertently contributing to the spread of the Black Death across Europe. Let the gentle rhythm of siege warfare lull you as we contemplate the trebuchet's presence. Like a slumbering giant, its arrival was announced by soothing mechanical sounds, the peaceful creaking of winches, the melodic grinding of ropes, and the deep, reassuring thunk of the counterweight, reminiscent of a distant heartbeat. The most unsettling element was the peaceful stillness between launches. Would the next projectile be a simple stone, a vessel of flame, a shower of arrows, or just more contemplative silence as the engineers made their careful adjustments? The psychological aspect of siege warfare flows like a gentle stream. The steady, hypnotic rhythm of the battering ram, or the profound silence before a launch, would slowly wear away at defenders' resolve. Commanders understood that breaking spirits was as important as breaking walls. They sought to create a deep, peaceful acceptance that resistance was futile, that divine favor had shifted, that even the strongest walls were merely temporary obstacles in the river of fate. When this psychological foundation finally eroded, the gates would often open without violence, for in siege warfare, the mind often surrendered before the stones. As your thoughts drift toward sleep, consider how gunpowder gradually transformed the medieval battlefield. Like the setting of the sun, the age of traditional siege engines slowly faded into twilight. Cannons rewrote the rules of engagement, achieving in moments what trebuchets accomplished in hours. Once mighty stone walls became vulnerable, and by the 15th century, Europe's proud castles began their quiet transformation into ruins, their walls yielding not to undermining or flame, but to the unstoppable force of iron spheres. Yet, as you float closer to slumber, remember that the ancient wisdom of siege engineering never truly vanished. It simply evolved. Modern artillery carries the legacy of those early catapults and trebuchets. Each missile and howitzer asks the same timeless question: how do we overcome the seemingly insurmountable from afar? The fundamental principles, physics, trajectory, tension, and force, were all discovered and refined long before gunpowder entered history's stage. Even today's military psychology echoes ancient siege tactics. Picture in your drowsy mind those majestic siege engines, their banners dancing in the breeze, the original embodiment of overwhelming force. Their purpose extended beyond mere wall breaking. They aimed to crack the very spirit of resistance. Their legacy remains visible in ancient ruins. Masada's Roman siege ramps still whisper their stories to the desert winds. Constantinople's walls, which stood proud for a millennium against countless siege engines, finally yielding to cannon fire. And Europe's castles, whose curved towers and angled walls tell tales of architectural evolution in the face of siege innovation. As sleep beckons, consider how siege warfare persists in our modern world. Though transformed, cities still face encirclement, defenders still know isolation, but now walls are digital, blockades economic, and blackouts informational. Yet the essence remains unchanged. One force seeks entry, another refuses it, and both demonstrate infinite patience in their struggle. While physical battering rams and trebuchets now rest in museums, the art of siege warfare endures, as relevant and impactful as ever in our digital age.